Attention higher ed leaders. Are you ready to transform your marketing and enrollment strategy? Don't miss Insights EDU, February 12th through 14th in New Orleans, the premier conference for higher education marketing and enrollment management. Spots are filling fast. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go!
At Ellucian Live 2025, we're going to explore the magic of innovation. We want to imagine, believe, and achieve. It's happening April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida, and we're going to explore technology, modernization, and
artificial intelligence.
Explore the latest technology solutions, discover industry insights, and make valuable connections as a global community. It's time to register for Ellucian Live 2025 at elive.ellucian.com.
Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
Welcome to the EdUp Experience College Closure miniseries, Through the Eyes of. Today, we look at college closure through the eyes of Professor John Nichols. John was a professor faculty at St. Joseph College in Rensselaer, Indiana, when it announced its closing in 2017. John is also the author of Requiem for a College, and I am sure we will get to discuss that a little bit. It's basically what happened after college closed and what the human side was, and that's what we're here to discuss today. I am your host, Dr. J. Keene. According to reports by the Higher Education Dive Team, there have been 118 colleges that have closed or merged since 2016. I worked for one of those 118 colleges. Experts are predicting hundreds of more colleges or mergers over the next 5 to 10 years. Why are there so many closings? There can be many reasons why a college closes. It can be lack of funding, declining enrollments, reduction in state funding, low perception of the value of higher education, damage to academic reputation, accreditation issues, or really just simple gross and significant mismanagement. I'm sure our guest today will have what to say about that. What often gets lost is in this drastic outcome is the human trauma that may become a byproduct. This podcast series will examine the human story through the eyes of the president, faculty, staff, and student. As stated, today I am talking with Professor John Nichols. John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me on, Dr. King.
Great. So why don't we start with the practicalities, like what was happening at the time when St. Joe's closed, and go into what you as a faculty member knew before the announcement. What was going through your mind? How did this all come about? How much did you know beforehand?
The closure happened in 2017. We were, and when I say we, I mean faculty, we were aware of financial difficulties happening. Mm-hmm. We were aware of rumored amounts of debt, somewhere between 24 million and 27 million.
Wow.
But this part of it is that many of us are trained in our own disciplines and not in finances. So if you tell me, I actually wondered, well, is 27 million a lot? I, for instance, you could technically say I am 100-some thousand in debt because of my mortgage, but I pay it off. As long as I make my payment every month, there is no problem. If they had asked for, the bank had asked for all 100,000, I don't have that, so then we would have a problem. So I guess my idea of institutional debt as an English professor wasn't what it is right now. There were rumblings, and we knew that it was something that was likely to be serious. we were looking at ways how we could change, how we could make our classrooms revenue positive, making sure that we had a certain amount of student number in filling the seats in every classroom. The tone really shifted was in 2016 when we had our HLC site visit, and we met all expectations except for financial. Our accreditation was placed on probation. And then we knew that there was going to be something more serious afoot, but we were assured by our president at the time that we had years to fix this and that it was something that was manageable. Well, come 2017 in January, our very first faculty meeting was the president, or speaking for most of it, saying we are now at a precipice. Our financial situation is dire, and if St. Joseph's College is to survive, it would have to look like something dramatically different from what it did at the time. This was a shock to most everyone, and it was a very, I guess, just sort of living in midair suspension in a sense of free fall until February 3rd, when the closure announcement was made, and that was devastating. That was devastating to everybody involved. So in a way, it was quite shocking to all of us. But after my research with Requiem for a College, it really should not have been so shocking. There were a lot of signs that should have been taken and considered far more seriously. But I think what happened was, since so many of the faculty and many others were so tied to the institution, that it was a calling. It was a labor of love for us to do this work. And so that has a tendency to blind you. And
I'm finding that not to be uncommon. I'm sorry. I'm finding that not to be uncommon, right? Especially in the smaller not-for-profit colleges, the people who work there, the staff, the faculty, want to be there. It's like you say, it's a calling. When you say shock, was it more because, again, you may have had some red flags, you may have seen it, in a retrospect, 2020 is hindsight, but at the time you didn't see it? Or was it also because of the seat, that senior administration, that the president was telling you, hey, we have a few more years, we have this debt, but we'll be fine, and that led up to the shock?
Yeah, I'd hesitate to call it deceit, because I would almost call it more misperception. There was, as I found, just from the president to the board of trustees, just a sense of almost paralysis, not accurately seeing the situation until it was just too late to do much of anything about. So I think the president may have fully believed that there were things that could be done. And I write in my book that from the faculty aspect, for the work we were doing to try to make changes, we left for holiday break in December feeling positive for the first time. And then to come back, and in January, our first faculty meeting is something that we're at a precipice, as a literal quote, that I think it was just more of not knowing what to do and simply not taking action.
So you say that in retrospect, there were warning signs.
Yes.
In retrospect, there were little things that may be bigger than you thought. I know in your book you talk about like some little bad decisions could lead into bigger things. Like you talked about, what was this decision that failed? That, did that contribute to the overall closure, or did it contribute to the snowball of overall issues leading to it? So, what were some of the warning signs that you looked at in your research, or after the fact you said, "Oh my God," like you hit your hand on your head and go, "Wow, I should have seen this," or "We should have seen that"?
Yeah, definitely. I think one aspect that really should have been taken more seriously was deferred maintenance of just about everything on campus. And there was a little bit of survivorship bias. Let me let the audience know a little bit that I grew up at St. Joseph's College, basically. My father had taught there and eventually became vice president for academic affairs. I then, in turn, attended there as a student, and my younger brother did the exact same. And by a confluence of events, we both returned to teach there. So we were also.
So it really wasn't just, a job for you. This was part of it was embedded in your livelihood.
Exactly. It was embedded in my family's existence.
Right.
And
right.
the idea that this place could go away at that point in time was like the universe falling apart. It was like the closure of a family business. But there were a couple other former graduates on faculty, and we would sort of joke about the deferred maintenance as that's the St. Joe charm. The light bulb's out again over in one of the labs or something like that. Hey, we all got through it. It was like this when we were students. Well, that blinds you to the fact that most contemporary college students and their parents, when they're visiting a place, they're looking at this and saying, well, gee, at home, it's not uncommon for a student to have their own bathroom or a lot of other amenities. So why can't they go half an hour south to Purdue University and pay less and live in a dorm that's closer to a hotel room and all these other sorts of 21st century standards? And someone on faculty joked, well, we've lost the student services arms race, and thought that, as a lot of students said, well, we're not here for the food. We're not here for the dorms. We're here for the experience we have at this small college and for the education we're getting, which is great. But were there enough? And and I think this is another key fact you said, what were red flags? The tuition discounts that so many were getting. I think it averaged somewhere around 65%. And so there was barely anyone, if there was anyone, enrolled at the college who was paying full price. We had a high proportion of student athletes, and they were getting discounts like crazy. Other students, but that's how, for a smaller college and for many other smaller colleges, I was seeing they are trying to remain competitive that way by offering such sky-high discounts, and that's not a sustainable business model. So I think the combination of those two factors, plus hearing about the debt, now looking back at it, I said, this is something that is in common with every small college that I've looked at just about that has collapsed. It's those three factors. And you can throw in declining enrollment and many, many others that you spoke about at the beginning of the show. So there were all these things going on, and I think there were a lot of us that just saw it, knew it. I mean, I think even the most cynical among us thought, well, we probably have about 5 years left, and if we can change things around in 5 years, then we might have a shot. But it's not to be.
That's an interesting point, because so you have this like almost shrug off approach. Oh yeah, we're struggling. Oh yeah, they're not fixing the lights, but we can get through this. We have if we need 5 years, and then we can turn it around. We can shrug it off for now. Do you remember if you shrugged it off 5 years earlier? Like at some point that 5 years comes due.
Well, yeah, I think that what gave me encouragement was the 5-year figure was told to me in 2016. So I thought that we had longer. But what really is another factor is we had older faculty who would say, well, we've been in this place before. And indeed, the college had. Looking back, I can't find this is a financial situation that went back decades. And there were, I think, at least 3 different pivotal times in the college's history where it looked pretty dire. One, just for example, was when the administration building burned down in the early 70s, and a lot of people thought that the college wouldn't recover, but through a fundraising drive and help from the town of Rensselaer, things did turn around. So there were all these different moments, and I think that, and they turned out reasonably all right. And I think that there was also that sense of, well, we've been here before, we'll get through it again. But eventually your number does come up. And there was just too much debt and just no way forward fiscally by February 3rd, 2017.
Two questions. The fact that you've been there before, the college has been there before where it had struggles, but it, kind of got through, did that give you a false sense of hope? Hey, we've been here before, so we don't get through this again. Nothing to worry about. Let's just keep on teaching. We're good. Did the fact that, you've been through it before, the college has been through it before, survived, now, give you that hope that we're going to survive again?
It wasn't that gave me the hope. My hope was in our alumni, and our alumni are extremely dedicated. One of the quotes that I have in the book was, after the closure announcement, there was an alumni effort to try to save the college. There was a television reporter who just sort of put his hands up and said to one of the alumni representatives, "What is this mythical Camelot? I have never heard of anybody talk about their college this way. This is just something else." So I thought that strong love, that strong tie, that the alumni would galvanize and come to the rescue. Well, it was too late to do anything like that. And one of the sympathetic areas I have among several for the Board of Trustees is, well, how do you go to alumni for support, say, earlier on, let's say in the 2000s, and say, we're in dire shape, we need help, please help. And at the same time, say to a whole other population, hey, we're enrolling for the fall, please.
Right. That's the catch-22. And
that is exactly the catch-22. And I think that what do you do?
Right. Well, what you do is, if you get to that point, you make that decision, you don't be able to plan a teach out. But most colleges that I'm researching and seeing aren't doing that. They're getting to the point like we got to, where it's too late. We can't do anything about it. Did senior leadership, were they transparent at all? Did they? I used the word deceit before. Maybe you corrected me and said that it wasn't deceit. That they really had believed that they're going to get through it. Did they involve faculty at all in any of the discussions?
There was a faculty committee, finance committee, and so there were a couple professors who were in the know. As far as decisions, there was one faculty voting representative on the Board of Trustees voted to remain open during the final vote as to whether or not what to do at the college. But I think that I keep coming back to the word paralysis. Now, that's one word with the board. Not sure what exactly to do. Also, amnesia is another word that kept coming up. This was a board of close to 30 members. And they would meet 2, sometimes 3 times a year.
Oh, wow.
And they would make a plan of, we need to really do something. Okay, well, let's do this. And then they'd go their separate ways, back to their businesses, back to their families. And because, it's a volunteer position. And you come back to meet again, and one representative I spoke with said they would completely somehow forget what the plan was they discussed about in the previous meeting. And so I think that there was, it was just a whole lot of factors. I mean, I think what is really telling is the schism of the vote for closure. It was somewhat tight. I think there were maybe, and I don't remember quite offhand, maybe seven votes separating the vote to technically suspend operations or to try to keep going. So when really, honestly, fiscally, there was no way to keep going. And yet there was a sizable amount who believed there was still a chance. And so everybody, it's like the movie Rashomon. Everybody on the booth was getting the same information, but really seeing it in different ways, sort of. So that was just one of the contributing factors to.
I want to ask you about getting that information, but something else that you just said about about holding on, right? So I think that another thing that we see common in the small colleges especially, but some of the other colleges as well, is that, they all think, we all think that it's gonna be fixed. We can do it. We're gonna get through this, right? When there is no fiscal way, there is no financial responsible way that it's going to happen, right? And so, to make that decision earlier, but then they wait a little while and they hold on and they're trying to enroll the last few students and trying to do whatever. And what they're really doing is ending up owing faculty money. They can't run classes. They can't do this until they die out on their own, because they held on too late to that hope, to that notion. We're going to restructure. We're going to, allocate money this way. We're going to, sell off this asset and we're going to survive, when really it was too late. Did the board, going back to getting that information, were they getting regular updates, accurate information? Do you think that they had a clear picture when they went into that vote, and you say it was actually a close vote? Do you think that they had a clear picture of the entire situation?
Now listen up.
Insights EDU 2025 is almost here. Join us February 12th through 14th in New Orleans for the most anticipated higher education marketing and enrollment management event of the year.
I like that.
Imagine 3 action-packed days filled with game-changing insights, real-world case studies, and a hands-on workshop designed to transform your marketing strategy and boost your program enrollment. Learn from speakers at Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the nation. Network with industry leaders, exchange ideas, and discover the tools to drive real results. This is your opportunity to stay ahead of the competition and meet the demands of today's modern learners. Don't wait. Spots are filling fast. Mark your calendar, rally your team, and head to insightsedu.com to register now. The era of the modern learner is here, and you need to be part of it. We'll see you in New Orleans. Ellucian Live is taking place April 6th through 9th, 2025 in Orlando, Florida.
You just made the list.
Get ready for an unforgettable experience at Ellucian Live 2025. Join visionary leaders from institutions worldwide as we dive into groundbreaking ideas, cutting-edge solutions, and transformative best practices that will ignite your passion for innovation. This is your chance to connect, collaborate, and propel your institution into the future. Do not miss out.
Let's go.
Do you want to get invites to special events? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes episodes, and original content? Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and become a subscriber today.
I think, again, it was just this fracturing. I spoke to a member of the board who used to be CFO at Wendy's International, and he presented each time on the financial situation. And he said, look, we've only got X amount of years left. And he'd speak with them again the next time around. Look, we've only got X amount of years left. And then at the end of it all, when the votes happened, there were other board members I spoke to said, well, we were never given enough information. We were never given a chance. And so you have these two completely competing points of view. And the only way this can happen is if there's just this fracturing of most everybody on the board was highly competent in their careers, wanting to do right by the college, but as a working entity, somehow it just ceased to work. As it would be a wonderful study of group psychology, I think, just see how this happened. And I think that's, if I can plug another book really quickly, Commencement by Kate Colbert.
Oh, Kate Colbert.
Yeah, it's a definite must read for higher education. And she talks about different strategies for board involvement and how that's going to have to change in the coming years, because like I said, we had close to 30 members on that board, meeting 3 times a year for a college that had just under 1,000 students. How do you need that many trustees for a school that size? And I think that's part of it too. That it just much to handle.
So, and Commencement, I didn't really get to read the whole thing just yet. I've had my hands on it, but Kate Colbert and Joe Salistio from EdUp Experience. Do you feel, and again, you probably didn't know this during that time, right? Like you say, some of this came as a shock, right? Do you feel that administration did everything it can to avoid this event, right? Did they look at whether they can sell off programs, whether they can, has the budget, was it already cut to the skeletal bones that it had to be cut to? Like what actions do you feel were taken to maybe have gotten rid of it? And like you said, maybe because this has happened so many times, there was only so many times that you can get to a point and get through it, and this was the breaking point. Who knows? But were there other things that were done?
Not to my knowledge. That one tactic that I talk about in 2008 was an arbitrage of taking out bonds and doing a capital campaign at the same time, and that it would look attractive to people if there were all these changes, these sorts of not remodeling, but just niceties going on campus, and it looked like they were going to do it. They were going to have the money to pay off the bonds, but the freshman class that year came in under what it was necessary to be, and they couldn't pay off those bonds.
Right.
According to one of the, as they said, they double dipped. They didn't earmark the money to pay that off. One said that's what sunk us, and yet the vote that I looked at in the trustees' records for taking that action was unanimous. It was unanimous, and no real dissent. So were there things that were done? I don't know. Looking back, I think there were a couple things. One, it's possible I would have been without a job anyway. There would have had to have been a retrenchment, and that would have been a loss of non-tenured faculty. I was not tenured at the time at that institution. So it would have been a dramatic rescaling of saying we are an institution of 1,000 students. We always will be, and so we're going to scale everything to that. But there were large athletic programs, large music programs, that's one, like I said, that was one of the reasons they were getting students in through the door, was with these big tuition discounts for doing these things. So if those were somehow cut in order to scale back, then you lose students.
Right. So you would have lost more than what you would have saved by not having that program.
Quite probably. Yeah. So did I see many things going on? No. I talk about in the book, there were these 4 alumni who were very successful businessmen who nicknamed themselves the Gang of Four. And they had a plan back in 2014 that they kept trying to approach the board saying, we can do something. We're going to fight for St. Joe. And there was a reluctance to even want to engage with that, or to let loose in any dire sort of way that there was. So I think that was, and that goes back to what we said earlier. How do you, sound the alarm and at the same time say we're enrolling? So
right. And that also goes to communication, what communication there is to faculty and staff and to the public, right? Because you can't sit there saying, well, we may be closing, so don't come to us. What's the message that the marketing team and the recruiters are out there, right, when they know that the university is struggling? So to a certain degree, senior leadership has to temper what they say, and they have to maybe hide some of the facts because they don't want it to be out there that we're closing, because suddenly it goes from having a low enrollment to no enrollment.
Yes.
So we've been talking about leading up to the event and the warning signs and what have you. What about after the event? After the decision was made, after that February 3rd announcement, was there plans for teach outs for the students? Did they work with faculty? Were faculty owed money? Did everyone, when the doors finally shut, was everyone up to date in payments? Did they owe vendors? What happened after?
Well, there were teach out plans. Those were I would say overall they were successful, but of course there were a couple that didn't work quite as there wasn't a seamless transfer of credit.
Was that internal, like with St. Joe's, or did they partner with another university to?
They partnered with Marian University. So I would say a very large amount of our student body went to Marian in Minneapolis.
Okay.
And there were non-tenured faculty got paid according to the handbook, got a severance of, I think it was 40 days pay because they were 40 days late and technically in notifying that we wouldn't be re-upped with our contract. But non-tenured, of course, you're more or less, you're not an at-will employee exactly, but you weren't owed as much as the tenured who got a year's salary. And what I just remember is that year being the worst of my life. And I was sorry, that was just segue to my next question. So go ahead. Okay. Yeah.
I was going to turn the spotlight onto you. How did this affect your personal life? How did it, what happened financially? You talked about shock, but I'm sure there was stress, anxiety. Talk about it, how it affects the human person, and then you specifically.
Like I said, that was the lowest point of my life, the most depressed I'd ever been, the most terrified I think I've ever been, because I knew it was this clock ticking away of just a matter of time before I'm unemployed. And I don't have a way to provide for my family. In the midst of that knowledge, in the midst of trying to find and apply for new jobs, which, by the way, we were midway in the hiring cycle for academics. Right. So most of the time, the job postings are in fall, and so we were in the middle of things. And at the same time, you still have to teach. You still have a semester to try to get through and do right by your students. And I had known most of these young people and grown fairly close to them and knew I had to show up for them. And that's what I was doing in classes. That's part of how I got through it is I'm going to do what I can for them and still juggle at the same time, trying to look for a new job and also try to deal with the fact that this place that had meant the world to me and was pretty much my whole world was going to be gone, going to go away. And that 2017 was just probably the worst of the worst. I talk about in the book about how it's bad enough to be unemployed. My heart goes out to anybody who is in that situation because it's terrible. And yes, it really affects self-esteem. It affects not just there's the financial part's bad enough, but with so much of our American society built on the ethic of work, we tie our self-worth in often with work, and if you don't have work, then what are you? So, but it wasn't just that; it was that I had to face the possibility of maybe no longer being a professor. And as we said earlier, most people who are in higher ed as professors are doing it because this is something we love to do. This is something we want to do, and it isn't a matter of, say, with other trades, maybe if it's IT or business, something like that, where a few people get really attached to their companies, it seems. And if they lose their job at one place, they're quite happy enough to go work at another. It wasn't like that here. This was a loss of identity for me. And it would be a whole year or more before I felt that come back and say, I can survive and I can move on and teach somewhere else and still be an effective educator and can move on.
And how did you do that? How did you bounce back? How did you move on? What did you do to get past the humiliation, the esteem issues, confidence? I know that comes along times when you get become unemployed for a little bit. How did you move on to get to where you are now?
Well, the confidence.
And how did the book help?
Yeah. The book, my reasons for writing the book those changed over time. when it was happening, the suddenness made for a lot, and oftentimes the lack of transparency. I'm not saying they were hiding, the administration was hiding something, but just there's a lot of information that could have been made clearer, could have just been more forthcoming, really, that in the absence of that, conspiracy theories formed. And at one point, I was convinced that this wasn't close, it was being taken from us. And so my book was begun out of revenge, I'll be honest with you. I was going to find the people who did this, and I was going to prove it. I was going to really nail them to the wall. Well, fortunately, as with my academic training, you have to change your mind if you're presented with evidence to the contrary. And I began finding more and more evidence to show there was nothing of any sort like that. This was, the most severe word I could give it is a bumbling. This was nobody intended for this to happen. And so I started to see this is actually far more complex and nuanced than any kind of conspiracy that had been alleged previously. And so then my motive was to understand it. And I figured if I could understand it, then I could go a long way towards accepting it. And by the time the book had been completed and I was running through drafts with other people, I said, now I can be at peace. Now I can finally start to let things go and move on. But to the other part of your question, the self-worth really takes a knock after a whole bunch of interviews and rejections or interviews, and you hear nothing back from them for months on end. It was my therapist who had survived a great trauma herself, said that you just keep going. You just, one day after another, one foot after the other, you just keep going and surrender to this idea. For whatever crazy reason, I'm in this situation now. I'm supposed to be in this situation, and we'll see what's next. So I got adjuncting. I started adjuncting because I felt that wasn't going to do a whole lot with money, but it would keep my CV active as a professor. I worked in a writing center at another university, so I had a couple jobs going on, and that kept me active academically, like I said, and it was just holding on until miraculously the institution I was adjuncting at had a full-time position open, and since I was already familiar with them, I was able to interview fairly well, and I got hired on full time. So it was just keep going. I wish I could be more eloquent than that, but that's what did it for me. You just keep going, and I'm blessed to have a great family and to have a lot of help from them. Yeah, nobody gets through this world without helps, and I'm certainly no exception.
I certainly understand that place that you're talking about. What's next for the book?
Well, thanks for asking. Next spring, we're hoping to have, with Silver Tree Publications, a new edition of Requiem for a College out. And this edition will be looking at what has happened with small colleges since the initial publication, looking at a few other closures and how they match up with St. Joseph's College, and in a few ways, how they don't. And one aspect I talk about is, and you sort of alluded to it, the idea of an ethical shutdown. Dr. Paula Langto from Presentation College, and she had gone through that with her own college, where you have to, yes, you're trying to fix things, but at the same time, realistically look at how long do you have, and at what point are you going to have to say, we got to call it quits here, so that we have, first of all, enough money to give the faculty and staff a fair and livable severance for a while, but also have enough time to get teach outs in solid place for our students. And
as well as the proper resources, the transcripts, the disability plans, if you have that, so many things that need to be transferred with the transition that I don't think many of these colleges are even thinking about. They just think about just shutting down or getting rid of what they have to get rid of and clean their hands. I really appreciate your time. I have one last question for you, and I am looking forward to the next version, the next edition of your book. But to close, what lessons can you share with others who may be in your position?
Wow. Who, if you mean faculty who are in precarious situations with their institutions, I would.
Or feel that there might be warning signs, but they don't know.
You don't know. It's difficult to hear. And if someone were telling me all this back in 2016 or 2015, I don't know if I would have listened, but you need to start asking questions about and demanding from the administration your answers for this if the data isn't publicly available. What is the tuition discount rate? What is the endowment at? What is the institutional debt at? And looking at all of these and maybe acting together as a faculty and saying, another plug, there's the College Viability app by Gary Stocker.
Yes.
Who has a lot of this information available on his app. You can go find out from that. I highly recommend that, and check your institution and see how it stacks up, see where it is, and start to, if they aren't happening already, start to demand difficult discussions.
My first podcast that I listened to of Gary Stocker's was yours when you were a guest.
Oh, was it? Oh, wonderful, wonderful. One quick thing I should also probably point out that while the college did, as they say, technically suspend operations, it is still active providing educational services right now. It surrendered its accreditation, so there are no baccalaureate or associate's degrees being offered, but there is a building and trades program that they're doing, and there are a couple of certificate programs being offered there for the community. Just to be clear and upfront, there are still activities going on that campus, but I believe they aren't calling themselves a college quite anymore. I may be wrong about that, but just to be clear, there is something still going on there.
Yeah.
College work anymore. And so, yeah, just clear about that.
Right. No, I appreciate that. I wonder if their purpose is just to have a little business, or they intend to build up again so that they can, start college again. Who knows?
Yeah, last communication, I don't really look at much at what they're doing. So what they're doing is what they're doing. It's no longer the place I know, of course, so I don't feel much attachment to it. But they're looking at what a lot of small colleges have gone through and say, well, okay, what are we going to have to pivot towards? Well, there's the immediate community. What are the needs of the immediate community? Maybe not college, maybe not that kind of education where, as you said earlier, there's all kinds of questions now about the worth of college education with high amounts. Mm-hmm. I personally think there's a beautiful baby sitting in dirty bathwater. And that's my view of higher ed right now. And I think there is a lot worth saving, but we do have to make changes.
For sure. Well, I really appreciate your time. More than that,
thank you.
I appreciate your vulnerability, your honesty. You talked about some personal effects that you had gone through, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And good luck. We hope to be in touch again soon.
You just made the list.
Mark your calendars for Insights EDU 2025, February 12th through 14th. Insights EDU 2025 is the can't-miss higher education marketing and enrollment management conference of the year. We're taking over New Orleans with speakers from Google, Meta, Reddit, MIQ Digital, and top schools across the country. Discover how AI is transforming marketing and enrollment management, how to assess online program opportunities, and meet the demands of today's modern learner. Don't wait. Spots are going quickly. Register now at insightsedu.com. Welcome to the era of the modern learner.
Let's go.
Are you going to miss Ellucian Live this year?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So you might as well register right now at elive.ellucian.com. Ellucian Live 2025, April 6th through 9th in Orlando, Florida. Do not miss it.
Do you want to accelerate your professional development? Do you want to get exclusive early access to ad-free episodes, extended episodes, bonus episodes, original content? That's right, original content, invites to special events, and more? Do you want to get all this while helping to sustain EdUp? Then go to edupexperience.com. That's EDUP experience.com and subscribe today.